I came back to life, and this time, I avoided every single encounter with Ethan. He said he wasn't going home for the break, so I packed my bags and went back to the village alone. He helped Linda rent a house next door, so I moved out. He decided to stay at the school for a job, so I applied to Northwest Industrial University. In my past life, even my own kids urged me to divorce him when we were old. It was so that, after we died, this ill-fated couple, could be buried together. Point 1 Looking at my acceptance letter, I almost cried. No one knew I'd been given a second chance. At the last minute, I changed my college application to Northwest Industrial University. Even my teacher was surprised. Didn't you say your fiancé was staying at the school? Going so far away to college, will he wait for you? At the mention of Ethan, his tall, handsome figure from his younger days flashed in my mind. Actually, everyone thought I was marrying above my station. He was ambitious, good-looking, and now a military officer, while I was just someone who, because of a childhood betrothal, had the right to stand by his side. I smiled, and replied loudly, "Teacher, we're in the age of free love now. My betrothal to him is a relic of feudal society, unacceptable." Perhaps she hadn't expected such an enlightened response. My teacher patted my shoulder, her eyes full of approval. Leaving school, I walked home with the crowd. Point 2 In my past life, I didn't even go to college, because in a few days, Ethan and I were getting married, and soon I had a child, so I didn't continue my studies. Ethan stayed at the school for a while before joining the army. After that, we were separated by a great distance. He rose through the ranks, and wherever he went, Linda, with her daughter, would transfer there, while I was stuck in a small world, serving my in-laws and taking care of my children. I watched my children grow from babbling infants, clinging to me, to grown-ups gradually distancing themselves from me, moving closer to Ethan. Later, I only found out about his wedding to Linda's daughter after the ceremony was over. I saw it in a photo from an old friend. Ethan and Linda were beaming, looking so affectionate as they served tea to their parents. Later, my son repeatedly urged me to divorce. He said, "Mom, Dad has suffered his whole life. If it weren't for you, he would have been with my mother-in-law a long time ago. Mom, you two are not compatible at all. Why can't you let go?" Even my daughter-in-law didn't want to see me, but what could I do? I wasn't willing to give up. I wasn't willing to accept that I cared for my in-laws day and night when they were paralyzed, while he was having affairs. I wasn't willing to accept that when my son had a high fever in the middle of the night, I ran 5 kilometers barefoot to the doctor because I was so worried, while he was teaching someone else's daughter homework with another woman. I was even more unwilling to accept that I gave up everything for this family, and in the end everyone said that I and he were not a match. Everyone blamed me. Why didn't I let go? But I didn't. Years of hardship etched deep lines on my face, making me look old and worn. Even in death, I would drag them down with me. As for whether they would be together after I died, I didn't care anymore. I didn't have the energy to care. Finally, I died after my son once again urged me to divorce. He talked for a long time, and seeing that I remained silent, he left angrily. He didn't know that the moment he slammed the door, I had a heart attack. I called out to him, but he didn't look back. That moment, I regretted so much. Why did I hold on to him? Why, because of him, did I waste my whole life? But thankfully, I was reborn. Back to before I married Ethan, everything was still possible. Point 3 Back home, I hid my acceptance letter and started cooking. This 2-bedroom apartment was provided by Ethan's unit. While cooking, I found the date for college orientation next month on the calendar in the living room and circled it in red. I looked at the circled date with longing. Soon, very soon, I would be free. Point 4 Ethan came home just as dinner was ready. Unsurprisingly, Linda and her daughter were behind him. "Sister-in-law, sorry to bother you again." Linda was fair-skinned, with an oval face, and her bright red coat added a touch of elegance. Her daughter was used to coming here, and seeing the food ready, she cheered and quickly served herself. A bowl for her, a bowl for Ethan, a bowl for Linda, but none for me. When I came out of the kitchen, the 3 of them were already sitting at the table, laughing and chatting like a family. But as soon as they tasted the food, all 3 of them spat it out at the same time. "Mommy, it's too salty." I leaned against the kitchen doorway watching Ethan hurriedly serve a bowl of soup to the mother and daughter. The soup was even saltier. Finally, Linda left in tears. Before leaving, she said to Ethan, "Sister-in-law probably doesn't like me. I won't come again." Ethan saw her to the door, and when he came back, he frowned. I ignored him and went back to the kitchen to cook a new dish. "You did this on purpose?" Ethan seemed puzzled. Then he started explaining. "Her husband died in action. He asked me to take care of them, and you're a great cook. The child likes your food." Seeing me silent, Ethan shook his head, seeming to concede. "If you don't like it, we won't ask them over for dinner anymore." 5 The next day, after Ethan left, I took out my bag, preparing to go back to the village in a couple of days. Although we had a childhood betrothal, both families had exchanged tokens and birth dates. Truly separate. I needed to formally break the engagement in front of the village elders to avoid future complications. While packing, I saw the quilt covers and pillowcases I'd secretly embroidered over the years. I grabbed a bag, put them in, along with the new shoes I'd made, and went to the pawn shop at the end of the street. I sold the things I'd spent years embroidering for $30. Although it wasn't much, it would be a significant expense for food and drink at college, so I could save this money. Back home, I put a big X on today's date on the calendar. 20 days left. 20 days. I could leave this place and start my new life. Point 6 Ethan came back very late. The prepared meal remained untouched. I ate at school, he explained casually, but smelling the scent of white tea perfume on him, I knew he had dinner with Linda and her daughter. He must have eaten out to avoid awkwardness. I silently cleaned up the dishes and went to my room. My high school textbooks and test papers filled the room and spilled into the living room. I bundled up the books in the bedroom, planning to pack the living room ones when Ethan left tomorrow. Since I was leaving, it wasn't appropriate for any of my belongings to remain here. As I was packing, I heard a knock on the door. It was Ethan. He was always polite to me and would never enter my room without permission. What is it? I didn't want him to see me packing, so I asked. There was silence for a moment. Then he said, I'm writing the marriage report. Can we set the date for the 9th of next month? The 9th of next month was the day Ethan and I got married in my past life. I looked at my packed bags and said calmly, marriage is a big deal. I'll ask my family tomorrow. There was silence for a long time before I heard him leave. I breathed a sigh of relief and leaned against the headboard. Actually, with his current position, he didn't need to ask permission from my family to file a marriage report. Moreover, my parents passed away when I was young, and because of the betrothal, his parents took me in. In everyone's eyes, I was already part of the family, and the marriage report was just a formality. Besides, he was handsome, successful, and kind to me. My feelings were clear to everyone. My heart was given to him. I did owe his family, but in any case, I'd repaid that debt in my last life. I owed them nothing anymore. This life, I would walk my own path. A path without Ethan. Point 7 The next morning, I found Ethan had made breakfast. My favorite fried eggs and ate treasure porridge. This was rare in the 3 years I'd lived here. I sat down silently. At the table, only the occasional clinking of spoons could be heard. I'll take a day off and go back with you, Ethan suddenly said. I was startled and instinctively shook my head. I'll drive you back. It's not safe for you to go alone. He frowned at me just as I was about to find an excuse to refuse. A little girl ran in. Uncle Ethan. The girl had 2 pink bows in her hair, and she ran straight into Ethan's arms. Lily, what are you doing here? Where's your mom? Ethan instinctively looked towards the door. Lily carefully looked at me from his arms. Mom said Auntie doesn't like her, so she didn't dare to come. I looked quietly at this girl, my daughter-in-law from my past life, who never appeared before me. Although she was only 3 years old, she was already a beauty. That's why my son, despite being 4 years younger, worshipped them. Ethan immediately left with Lily, because she said Linda was feeling unwell. Ethan didn't say a word, just rushed away with the child. I scoffed. Now I didn't have to worry about finding an excuse to go back alone. I took out my pen, stood in front of the calendar again, and put a big X on today's 1.19 days left. I quickly took out all the books from the room and bundled up all my notes, textbooks, and papers in the living room. After selling them, I went back to the village with $13. Today, I would officially break off the engagement with Ethan. Although his parents were pretty nice to me, it wouldn't be difficult to persuade them. I would simply tell them that Ethan was about to become very successful and that he and I were no longer suitable. Point 8 The countryside was quiet and gloomy. A bonfire burned in the courtyard, with mosquitoes dancing around it. I sat by the mud wall, pressing down on tobacco leaves with a wooden board, using a machete to finely chop them. My aunt and uncle sat silently on the doorstep. After a while, they sighed deeply and tried to persuade me. Sarah, even if he has someone else in his heart, you two are betrothed. If he dares not marry you, I'll deal with him. Your parents are gone. They asked us to take care of you before they passed. Seeing me silent, they looked at each other and sighed. Why are you so stubborn? Let's go to the village office. I silently followed them. The village office issued a certificate, and the betrothal gifts were returned in front of the older villagers. I breathed a sigh of relief and helped my aunt and uncle walk back. I knew they were doing this for my own good. Ethan was the perfect catch, so even his parents couldn't understand why I would break off the engagement. But I couldn't explain that I'd suffered enough in my last life. Even my only son was given to Linda, and they became a family and me alone for life. Point 9 The engagement was successfully broken. My aunt and uncle said, from now on, you are our daughter. I didn't tell them about going to college in the Northwest, but I stayed with them for half a month. When I left, they sent me to the village entrance. They kept talking, asking me to consider this my home and to always come back. When I got to town to buy a ticket, I saw they'd given me $200. My tears flowed uncontrollably. Point 10 Back home, I put 15 big red X's on the calendar. Point 4 days left. Only 4 days. Point 11 I was about to go to my room when I heard the door open. Ethan had just gotten off work, but Linda and Lily were with him. You're back? Ethan looked surprised. Linda nodded politely to me, then went into my room. I frowned as she casually closed my door, ignoring my belongings still piled in the living room. I looked at Ethan. Ethan hesitated, seeming to remember something. Linda's house leaked the other day, so she's staying here for a couple of days. I saw you weren't here, and you didn't have many things, so I let her stay in your room.